Healthcare carpetbagger Dr. Oz issues his first edict to emergency rooms, recommending they can deny life-saving abortion care to patients. We'll bring you all the deets.
Plus, Texas cops scanned 83,000 license plates across 6 states trying to track down an abortion patient, which isn't creepy at all. No siree, nothing to see here except 83,000 license plates.
And last week marked the 15th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. George Tiller, and we wanted to talk to a close colleague about his life and legacy.
Dr. Shelley Sella is here to talk about the humanity and contributions of this amazing abortion provider and about her new book, Beyond Limits, a reflection of her life and career as an abortion provider who specializes in compassionate care for patients who need abortions later in pregnancy.
Plus, to tell us how humor can help us through, even when life hands us some really fucked up lemons, comedian, actor, and former AAF writer Chanel Ali is here to help all of us navigate the trauma tsunamis happening in our own lives.
All this and the Breaking Abortion BS coming up on this episode of the Feminist Buzzkills, the podcast that Elon Musk also claimed was a disgusting abomination. I'm Liz Winstead, and I'm joined by my co-host, Moji Alawode.
He absolutely did say that about it, actually to my face, but he was high, so I didn't really take it seriously.
He's always high. I mean, it's just unbelievable. He is just like this walking ketamine grifter. You know, he's like one of the bad boyfriends on Sex and the City in like circa 2001.
Oh, like someone who would break up on a Post-it, but the Post-it would get you high when you touched it?
Or you just so high you'd break up on a Post-it. Yeah. I mean, the dude does have like a couple of lawsuits trying to get sole custody of kids that he just ignores.
Never sees.
So gross.
Wild.
So, okay. Speaking of gross and men and everything, I was reading this article and it got me so outraged, Moji, and then I sent it to you.
It made me want to spit.
It made you want to spit. So basically, there's a nonprofit started by the woman who used to run NARAL Pro-Choice America. They got $20 million to do a study over 2 years, I guess maybe through Harvard, to figure out how Democrats can better communicate to bros who hate them.
I was so mad when I read this. A, $20 million, a lot of fucking money. B, who cares about those dudes?
Well, the thing that was so wild is even the article was like, they're being mocked, which, yeah, but it's not even being mocked. It's like Democrats have been out of touch all the time. We talk about it constantly when it comes to abortion, right? This sort of like consultant class of political operatives who don't know shit. The fact that these people get $20 million to study why men are mad when they don't understand that these Rogan types and these bros, they weren't changed by the internet. They used the internet to find community for their already solidified misogynistic shitty beliefs.
Also, who cares about these dudes? Like $20 million to get disaffected men seems insane.
I just want to say a little bit about what's in the study. They found that young men feel they're in crisis, stressed, ashamed, and confused over what it means to be a man in 2025. They vented about conflicting cultural messages of masculinity that put them in a no-win situation around the meaning of a man. Now, let me just say, we have known from the jump, there is not one way to be a woman, or women don't struggle with being a woman. We're just women and we have our interests, right? And this crisis, you decided to not join the world as it grew. And now that the world grew and people who were given opportunities, Black folks, people of color, women, queer people, ran with the opportunity and excelled, sorry, catch up.
We have had 50 years of trying to claw some semblance of humanity, some semblance of equity, right, in America, and we have excelled, right? Black women are one of the most educated class in this country right now. Women are out here doing shit. Black people are out here doing shit. Men have had 400 years in this country, particularly white men, to do whatever the fuck they wanted. And the minute they have anything that looks like it's not even competition, right? We know that feminism saves us all. So it's not even competition. It's just when they have people standing next to them saying, oh, yeah, this looks great. We can all do it. They said, oh, we're going to take our toys and go home. That's what it feels like.
Well, and these Democrats were like, we need to talk to them about crypto. You know, most Democrats don't even know what like the red pill gym is. It's like, look, the fact here, one guy in their study was singing the praises of Andrew Tate.
Red pill gym are 3 trigger words for me.
Right.
Like literally 3. If you don't know what red pill is, good for you. Lucky you. Because we know it's terrible shit.
Well, I mean, know what red pill is, right? I mean, it's just like your implicit bias down a rabbit hole of the manosphere. But why I'm so angry about this is all the Democrats have done, including now a $20 million study, is do everything in their power to try to make it so half the country aren't violent, misogynistic racists. And you want to know what? They are.
Also, all the Democrat Party did, it's not even half of the Democratic Party is fine with the violent, misogynistic, racist, right?
Do you mean the Democratic Party?
Listen, I don't think Democrats are not racist, Liz.
No, but do you think half the Democratic Party is racist?
Yes, I think half are. And maybe not violent, but racist. I think that racist believes it's in the air we breathe, right? It's in the air we breathe. You look at like anti-choice Democrats, you look at some Democrats and they're a little questionable in their beliefs, but they're not, okay, maybe they're not violent, but they're not rabid, and they're definitely not trying to drag us into the Neanderthal era. If you think that we need to spend $20 million to wonder why men are mad, that's just ridiculous. I can tell you why men are mad. They're not doing shit.
Well, also, they're mad because they're now required to do shit to succeed when we've always been required to. So, you know, here's the thing. I'm sorry that like nobody invented a couch that flushes and a TV that shoots hot pockets into your mouth so that you could just live there and have that be your world. But those of us who would like to succeed actually thrive when we're smarter and when we work harder. And this is such garbage.
But to put $20 million towards studying men when the gender pay gap is still huge and there's no end in sight to it, right? You're still ahead. You're still ahead. This is coddling the coddled.
Right. And what they uncovered was literally men complaining about the fact that there are different ways to be a man in the world, and they would like just one. And they would like that to be, I go to the gym and you raise the kids and I go to work and I'm the head of the house. And I don't know why anybody needed $20 million.
Nobody needed $20 million for that.
We'll put the link to read it. It is massively infuriating, and trying to get these people to be part of the Democratic Club would literally mean selling out the values of all of the people who are the foundation of this party. So fuck you and your $20 million study. I am so done with men being sad about having to work to succeed.
Is it too soon for me to just say I'm done with men? I'm just done.
I mean, no, I don't think so.
I'm just done with men.
I'm done.
Anyway, shall we get to the steaming news dump of this week's abortion news?
Sure. Speaking of men who are failing, so they must take us down. Trigger warning, our first story involves a sexual fantasy of being graped by falling sky garbage.
Judd Stone, the former Texas Solicitor General who argued for the Texas abortion bounty hunting law, is facing allegations that during his time at the Texas AG's office, he was obsessively and publicly fantasizing about a colleague being anally assaulted by an asteroid.
This is so weird. Allegedly, Stone's asteroid fantasies were repeated so frequently and with such great detail that the number 2 at the AG's office feared so much for his family's safety that he consulted other top Texas officials about it.
No word as to the role Jewish space lasers play in all of this, but we'll keep you posted as the story develops.
Woof. Putting the ass in asteroid. What a freak.
So weird.
So weird. Okay, let's head over to Kansas, where in the wake of Georgia forcing a brain-dead patient to remain on machines to continue a pregnancy, 2 physicians and 3 women want to repeal a Kansas law that nullifies the end-of-life directives if you are pregnant.
30 states have laws on the book that compromise a pregnant person's advance directive, ostensibly reducing us to nothing more than a birthing vessel. No word on whether Pete Hegseth wants to rename the uterus the USS Man Cave.
You know he's doing it.
Oh, it's done already.
Yeah, it's done. And finally, some good news. Good news. This week, Illinois continued to do the most to solidify access to abortion. A bill that will protect mifepristone is heading to the desk of Governor J.D., the people's billionaire Pritzker, no matter what restrictions RFK Hole places on it.
And a bill just passed in the Illinois House that mandates access to abortion on college campuses. Pretty soon, you'll be able to order up a Chicago dog with mustard, relish, onions, and a side of abortion pills.
Just never ketchup.
Liz, what do you have against ketchup? Kids love ketchup.
You don't put ketchup on hot dogs. Only bad parents teach children to put ketchup on hot dogs. Are you a bad parent, Moji?
I take exception to that.
I don't think so.
Before we get to the stories we will dig deeper into, we have some business to take care of.
We're going to make some news on the pod. For those of you who participated in our big, massive Operation Save Abortion in 2022, or any subsequent smaller ones, we are doing another big one live from Netroots Nation on August 9th. And it's going to be this incredible conversation with Moji and I and the programs team at Abortion Access Front. So we're going to talk about how to do some heart-to-heart activism as we are, constantly being bombarded with all this bad news. We have so many tools and so many opportunities and so many ways that you can give from you to patients and providers. So you're really connecting. And then we're going to have a workshop afterwards, 90 minutes, 45-minute conversation, and then a little workshop that's going to train you in 3 different ways that we go about doing some of the activism at Abortion Access Front.
I think it's going to be incredible, Liz. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Gather with your friends, come together, sit down and watch this, do the activity work together, download the workbook. It's going to be so good.
Yeah, the workbook, because we'll be doing it with you. So it's a explainer and then it's a let's do it together. So we have a link that we're going to throw in our show notes. It's aafront.org/opsave-netroots. We'll put it in the show notes. Don't worry if you don't remember that. And you'll be able to click on that, sign up. And once you sign up, gather your friends, and then we'll email you a toolkit. We're available for questions ahead of time. And the live stream, it's from 12:30 to 2 Eastern time. Live from New Orleans. So that is some big ass news. So now and forever, let's break down our stories of the week.
All right. So after the Dobbs decision, the Biden administration decided to remind hospitals that they have a federal commitment to provide pregnant people who show up at the ER stabilizing care, regardless of what their state's abortion ban might say. And this also gave people a little protection if an overzealous state prosecutor went after them for saving someone's life with abortion. They might have the support of the federal government because there's a statute that supports them in that called EMTALA. Well, this week, the Trump administration let hospitals know that that memo has been revoked. But it also didn't give any new guidance, just nothing.
There's nothing. So, as Moji mentioned, the acronym for it is EMTALA, which stands for Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act. So we'll just refer to it as EMTALA heretofore. And EMTALA was kicked in the 1970s when, under the cold-hearted ass fuck Ronald Reagan, even had some empathy, right? And what was happening is that people who were low income, unhoused, just in all kinds of ways, were being turned away from hospitals, back in the day. And so what happened was a lot of hospitals around the country are subsidized by Medicaid money. And so what EMTALA established was that no matter what your ability to pay is, if you are a hospital that takes federal Medicaid dollars, you are required to treat that patient not only to save their life, but to save their health. So cut to, that's how Biden was like, wait a minute, if they're going to throw Dobbs into the mix, reminder, somebody who is coming in hemorrhaging or with a pregnancy and an abortion would save their life or their health, you are required to follow this law. Well, enter Texas and Idaho and other states saying, our abortion ban says we can preempt that, or we're following it, we really are. And it's like, really? Then why are people being airlifted out of your state? because doctors in emergency rooms won't provide the care you need. And if you're saying, wait a minute, all of those cases in Texas where those women were turned away and bleeding in their cars and whatever, shouldn't they have been covered under EMTALA? Yes. Yes, they should have.
They should have. And Idaho was the one that went all the way to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
The case was called Moyle versus the United States, because basically Idaho was like, along with other states, were like, fuck this. And the United States was like, no, no, no. You have to provide stabilizing care. And basically, we listened to the oral arguments. You can listen to previous podcasts about this. Idaho argued, no, no, no. We're fine. Life of the mother is perfectly fine. We are actually in the statute of EMTALA. Went to the Supreme Court. I'm glad, Liz, that you brought up the airlifting, because SCOTUS allowed the law to go into effect without having to acknowledge EMTALA for months before they heard the oral arguments. And so in the oral arguments, the Solicitor General basically said they've been airlifting people to Utah because they can't get the care they need to stabilize them and to save their lives in this state. Well, the non-decision was finally handed down. 3 of the more conservative justices, Roberts, Kavanaugh, and Coney Barrett, sided with the liberal justices, but they didn't give us a real decision. They basically stated that the case was improvidently granted, which basically said, oh, we shouldn't have taken this, but we're not going to talk about the main issue, which is, should the state give people stabilizing care when they show up in the hospital, and abortion is the standard of care to stabilize them? And Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson dissented from the opinion and was like, guys, we're just punting. Can we answer this so that people have clarity and that American people, pregnant people, can get the help that they need?
Right. And one of the big things in this case is the fact that Alito and Idaho are both trying to wedge personhood into this also, because there is this, we must treat the fetus as a patient separately from the pregnant person. And so that part of it is just sort of left hanging, right? What does that mean? And it feels to me, Moji, like the cruelty of not having clarity, not allowing it to go back through the courts so that we can require states, not just if you're on your deathbed, but to make sure you don't lose your ability to be pregnant, to make sure you don't lose organs. It's all kinds of intervening factors that aren't imminent death, but can destroy how you live your life forever. And now that it lays there and Dr. Oz is just like, no, we're going to follow EMTALA. It's like, bitch, nobody understands what that means.
Also, and I want to go back, because again, the Supreme Court said we are going to kick it back down to the lower court. The lower court can figure this out and answer this question. Well, the minute the administration changed to the Trump administration, they just dropped the case.
Yeah.
They just dropped it like a hot potato. They said,
Yeah.
oh, we are no longer defending this on the behalf of the United States and the citizens of the United States. This isn't our problem any longer.
Yeah, Pam Bondi didn't want to defend us, you guys. I know that's shocking. But good old Pam Bondi, not a fan of you living. So
the case isn't done. Actually, an Idaho hospital has picked it up. We'll see where that goes. But then the Trump administration sent this memo recently.
Yeah, so that gives guidance and gives like all those bad attorneys general reasons to say.
It gives no guidance. They just said they sent the memo that the Biden administration had sent, and they said this is revoked. And that's all they said.
Yeah. So it's just more confusion for more people still going to emergency rooms, dying, possibly dying, more doctors saying, I am unclear how EMTALA fits here, and then especially when you have laws like in Tennessee where they say, hey, you know what, do the procedure, and then later on we'll decide if we should prosecute you.
That is the darkest thing. And it's not just Tennessee, but Tennessee was the first time we talked about it, which is wild. And then, Dr. Oz has said we are following EMTALA, but there are no guidelines to how the federal government interprets EMTALA, which I think just leaves the states to basically be the wild, wild west.
Well, and I think that, I'm glad the hospital is taking up the case because I do think they have the most standing.
Yes.
Right. And so to get this through and to once and for all, you don't want people to die. Although you hear so many doctors who are anti-abortion doctors being like, it's not in my nature to have to kill a baby because I think I'm a doctor because I like the aesthetic pleasing nature of it. Shut the fuck up. There's literally is what they say.
Also, Liz, you brought up an incredible point earlier, which is just we're seeing like this new non-study about the mifepristone. This junk science is being elevated in our country and elevated to these people who now run our country that say, "Oh, these are things that we need to consider." And so when you read things, and we have read them and I have railed against them, that says, "Oh, an ectopic pregnancy can be taken out and reimplanted," which is not a thing. We don't have the technology for that. And if an ectopic pregnancy is left untreated, it can grow and it can rupture and it can kill someone. And actually, a Texas hospital was recently found to have violated EMTALA because that's exactly what happened. They sent a woman home with an ectopic pregnancy and her fallopian tube ruptured.
Right. And so if science that's real is going to be replaced with this junk weird, we're going to try to take your ectopic pregnancy and reimplant it into your uterus, and that should be a life-saving measure before an abortion. This is the kind of shit that we could literally be stuck with. Again, taking these decisions away from physicians on the fly who need to do this, who are experts, is terrible. And I was saying, Moji, what's going to happen to game shows if there's just made up facts and made up science? Like, can you have Jeopardy anymore if someone's like, no, that's not true. My textbook says something else. Like, I don't know. But like, this is the slippery slope we're going down. And so, the game of Jeopardy might have to go to the Supreme Court to be like, look, is this real or is this not?
They said on Jeopardy that an ectopic pregnancy could be fatal. And I feel like this hurts my feelings, and I don't want to hear that in the state of Texas. Really makes a lot of sense as an actual lawsuit to me right this minute. And that is terrifying.
I know. It's really wild. And speaking of Texas, because we can't stop speaking of Texas, the story that really just got me going, this is, we've talked on this podcast about surveillance a lot, right? And this week, 404 Media, if you're not following 404 Media, please do. They're great independent journalists. They need your help. So 404 Media has obtained through multiple data sets that show through the month of May, a Texas officer from the Johnson County Sheriff's Office, which is near Dallas, used automatic license plate reader cameras made by a company called Flock to perform a nationwide search of more than 83,000 cameras in 6,800 Flock networks to hunt down one woman who they said had a self-administered abortion. Now, in the 83,000 cameras, they were in states where abortion is legal, like Washington and Illinois.
This is terrifying. And just to give a little backstory around Flock, it was designed to be used for individual communities to stop carjackings or to find missing people. But this news shows that police in one state can basically go into the program, use the technology to hunt down people who have had abortions.
It's unbelievable. So this story just gets me. The sheriff said he talked to 404, and the reason he gave for the intense hunt was that the family was worried for the woman's safety. And so they contacted authorities, and the authorities used Flock in an attempt to locate her. Now, luckily, they still had issues with this nationwide search, and she eventually they never found her, and she eventually contacted her family, and she's fine.
Here's the thing. I call bullshit. In the time it would take for you to call a cop and say, I can't find my family member who may have had a self-managed abortion and fled the state, which seemed like two conflicting things that a person would have to do, you could just Google and see that abortion pills are safer than Tylenol.
I mean, I don't know that it's conflicting, because if I took medication abortion and then I read something that says you can't have an abortion in your state, and you kind of didn't know how to Google, I might leave to terminate the pregnancy in another state. Like, if I didn't know, I can see doing that.
Okay. Mostly what I'm getting to is I don't believe the family exists.
Okay.
I'm talking about the family. I don't believe that the family exists. And I don't believe that one cop did that much work. And if she did have a family, where was her support person?
Right. And if there was that family and they were presenting like they were concerned, it's kind of like the movie Sinners. It's like, this person's acting nice, and the second they get through the door, they're zombie monsters. So it could very well be that she had a very unsupportive family who was trying to get law enforcement to hunt down this person. And that's why she fled and didn't let them know if there is a family. But also, you know what nobody ever said? What if this creepy cop was like the father?
Whoa, that's a monkey wrench.
I'm not saying this is true. I'm just purely supposing that this guy was like, you know what, my partner is going to have an abortion and I'm going to use what the utilities at my disposal.
I'm going to reiterate that this is all speculative and not based on any facts.
100%.
But I feel like this sounds like the part of it that has legs to me is that we hear stories of people going to police and saying, my family member is missing. I can't find them. My roommate didn't come home. And police saying, well, call us in a couple days, or like, fine, we'll take a report, and nothing happened.
In Texas, there is no wait.
Like, no, I know there is no wait, but we do know. We see stories of people who say that, and I don't know about if it's in Texas in particular, but cops not doing the bare minimum to find people when you're told, I'm looking for a person.
100%.
And so why would this one cop be like very invested in this one woman?
And also, let's remind you, we've talked a lot about Jonathan Mitchell on this podcast. And Jonathan Mitchell is the attorney. He used to be the Solicitor General of Texas. He's argued before the Supreme Court 8 times. He's the author of the Texas bounty hunting law. And he has his own law practice where he is in Texas actively recruiting men and family members who have been against their partner or their loved one having an abortion. And he is trying to get those people to press charges on the people who aided and abetted the person who had their abortion. He's done it several times.
Several times.
And so I'm like, is Jonathan Mitchell involved in this somehow? You know, again, speculation, but like in a state where they're actively promoting hunting people down, it seems super fucking creepy. And I'm just trying to figure out what's next. I feel like, is there going to be an Amber Alert for people who have fled a state to have an abortion? Instead of milk cartons, they'll just put abortion patients' pictures on NASCAR, maybe the NASCAR suit on the NASCAR itself.
Missing abortion patients.
Have you seen this horror?
Maybe you're just sitting in a cafe minding your business and everyone's phone buzzes and you see a picture of a person like, this slut's probably having an abortion.
Exactly. So, you know, we've talked about this a lot, this ways they surveil. Couple months ago, we talked about how there's a tracker where they can track people that take you to clinics. You know, Flock, this company, is super proud of the fact that they literally said, we created a product and we support people to leverage technology for their values. And it's not values to hunt somebody down. And this makes us so mad that I want to get into it further because it feels like there needs to be laws about how you can track somebody. And so the good news is Moji and I got so pissed off that next week we're going to continue this conversation with California Congressperson Sarah Jacobs, who introduced a bill called the My Body, My Data Act that was written specifically to talk about reproductive data issues. And I cannot wait to talk to her, which this is just fucking scary shit. But can I just take us back, Moji, all the way back to the fact that a woman had to flee out of her state to have an abortion, right? Like, let's get back to what that is. And the trauma around that, the fact that she did it by herself, which, you know, says a lot about the support system she had. She had to find care. She probably was remaining pregnant longer than she had to be or wanted to be, probably trying to find resources to make that trip. And there's so many factors that force people into unsafe pregnancy situations where they may have to have their abortion later. And I think it's really important, and I don't think we talk enough and have the same compassion and clarity for those people when they have to navigate so many hurdles to have an abortion later in their pregnancy. And I think that we need to have the same compassion we do for people that have fetal anomalies or life-threatening pregnancies.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
All care that is denied or that is delayed is life-threatening. And I'm really glad that our next guest coming up is here with us because I feel like they're the perfect person to start this conversation.
She's an OB-GYN and the first woman to openly practice third-trimester abortion care. She worked with Dr. George Tiller, whose life was taken by an anti-abortion extremist, and she was featured in a documentary called After Tiller about her abortion work in New Mexico after his murder. Now she's written a book called Beyond Limits that chronicles her life and experiences doing this specialized form of abortion care, and we are so excited to talk to her about it. Please welcome Dr. Shelley Sella.
Hello, Dr. Sella.
Hello.
Hello, glad to be here.
We are so glad you are here because this whole book, how we've talked about abortion for years, how we've talked about abortions that happen later in pregnancies, has just been so demonized. And to be able to level set and give people a new way to think about it is so important. And I'm just so excited because we've silenced ourselves for a lot of years. And so a lot of the way that we talk about abortion has just been propaganda of the anti-abortion extremists. I guess I wanted to jump in and ask you, like, what are some of the ways that you reframe the narrative when talking about abortion that can help our readers and listeners here shut down all the dangerous BS that comes out of the extremist movement and also helps people talk about abortion, not only using facts, but also as important, using compassion?
I really like what you said about how we've silenced ourselves because I think we've done that and it's a disservice. And so it's done on many levels. One of them is the fear of even talking about abortion care later in pregnancy. And then if we do talk about it, who do we decide we're going to talk about? And that's something that I think is really important to broaden our view. In my book, I'm very deliberate about talking about all kinds of people who find themselves needing an abortion later in pregnancy. And I talk about the stories that we often hear, and I call those fetal indication patients. And those are the ones who find out either at some point in pregnancy that their baby has a condition that is so serious and they don't want their baby to suffer. And baby is the word that they use. And they decide to end the pregnancy to prevent suffering. And those are the stories we hear about, if we're going to hear of any stories. And yet they are not the only ones who seek an abortion later in pregnancy. The other group I call maternal indications, who are seen because of difficult life circumstances. And that can be so many different ones, and often more than just one situation that has brought them to the place where they need an abortion later in pregnancy. So those voices have been silenced. What I've done in the book is all the patients that I talk about are composites of patients that I saw in the clinic. And what I do in the book is I take 6 patients through a week at the clinic. 3 of them are fetal indications and 3 are maternal indications. And I've done that very intentionally so that we can see that everyone is deserving of competent and compassionate care. So that is one way that we have silenced ourselves, really. And the other thing that we've done, I think, is focus on viability using the Roe framework. So in the Roe decision, viability is defined as the ability to survive outside the womb with or without artificial support. So, notice for one thing, it just talks about the fetus. It doesn't mention the pregnant person at all. It doesn't mention their circumstances. It doesn't mention the short-term and long-term possibilities for this child once born. It does not at all take into account the complexity of life itself. And so when we just focus on that definition of viability, we leave out so much and so many.
Well, also, Dr. Sella, wasn't that a construct of the court?
Yes, that was the court that made that decision. But since then, I think we've kind of fallen into the trap of just thinking in those terms.
Mm-hmm.
And viability, like, what is that? It's an ever-changing definition. I mean, in Alabama, viability begins at conception. I think we do a disservice when we stick to that notion. So I'd like us to think about viability in a completely different way. And viability is the pregnant person themselves deciding that the pregnancy is either viable or non-viable. And every person that I saw came to that decision, and they based that decision on the reality of their lives and not this kind of fantasy version of their lives. So they looked at all the factors that would compel them to seek an abortion. So it could be financial. It could be what healthcare resources would they have? Do they have adequate housing? Do they have enough food? Can they care for the children that they already have? What educational opportunities will they have or not have if they have a child at this stage in their life? So there's so many factors that someone takes into consideration. And yes, it does include the baby, but it also includes them, their community, and their family. And that's viability to me. That's the person deciding, is given the reality of my life, is this particular pregnancy in this particular time viable or not?
I love this framing of viability as something that is a whole entity, that is something that takes into account the entirety of what is happening in someone's life. And I think that's a disservice and something we've allowed antis to do. They get to do a lot of the framing of what is important, where to focus, and their focus is 100% always unapologetically at the fetus. And I think our silence has kind of allowed them to stand that. We use euphemisms. We just decide not to say the word abortion. I feel like up until very recently, it was really tough, even for pro-abortion people, to say the word. I think even myself, as a person who's had abortion, I remember feeling shame around talking about it in some places, blue as New York. And it also has allowed us to not trust the pregnant people like you have basically just stated. But I think the real danger I see in allowing the anti-abortion movement to really frame their value system as the predominant one is it allows them to also give a sense that we, as people who believe that individual people have the right to determine their lives and determine what their bodies are ready to do at this moment, as people who don't have values, right? There's like, they have values and we don't. And can you further elaborate on this sort of lack of value that I think the anti-abortion movement is very happy in framing us as having?
And I want to talk about that, but I also just want to say about language, you're absolutely right. You know, often it wasn't that long ago that you couldn't say abortion, right? I mean, and it actually drove me crazy. It was like a woman's healthcare decision. I mean,
Right.
what are you talking about?
Who makes an appointment for a reproductive right?
I've never made an appointment for a choice, not once.
Yeah, a woman's choice, discomfort with the word baby, when in fact, those who are capable of pregnancy, who may want to continue the pregnancy, but realize that it is not viable for them at this time, they will call it a baby at 6 weeks, at 4 weeks. They may have feelings. And that's another thing that has been silenced, but is shifting, I think, that it's okay to have feelings. It's okay for that pregnant person to have feelings about the pregnancy. It's okay for us outside to have feelings about abortion care later in pregnancy. We can be conflicted. That's okay, but it doesn't mean that we restrict or ban access to abortion for other people who are looking at their lives and making the decision for themselves. The framing of values, I think that's so important because the people that I cared for obviously cared very deeply about their families, about their own health, about their children's health, and the health and safety of this pregnancy, not just physically, but emotionally. What would it mean to give birth at this stage in their lives? What would it mean for that child? They're deeply moral people. We absolutely need to bring back the pregnant person into the conversation. I do think that's changing with storytelling. And I hope that this book really helps people too, because I focus a lot on the patient and on their stories and on their situations. And so, I mean, I think it's implicitly political, but it's not explicitly, it's certainly not a diatribe and it's not a polemic. It's like, here are these people, these are the situations, this is why they're seeking an abortion.
And I think to that point, it's why I think that doctors who provide the care, who can do a reset on every abortion comes with its own unique circumstance, right? And so to try to have a blanket morality around abortion, blanket laws, blanket anything, why we legislate medical care anyway, I don't really understand. But, but for people to read this and have to examine other people's circumstances that they never have thought of before with compassion, I think is one of the reasons why this book is so powerful. And while we have a million of amazing researchers who I love and amazing theorists who I love who write books about abortion, I think being able to frame just how people come to this situation and to be able to introduce their whole selves to it is critical in changing people's minds and the way they think about it, which in turn changes the population's minds, which in turn tells people to tell politicians to shut the fuck up, quite frankly. Right? I mean, I hope that is the trajectory that I hope for every day.
Yes, I don't know I'd use your wording, but
most don't.
But I certainly agree with you. And one of the things I hope is that when people understand other people, when people have empathy, then they would see that gestational limits don't make sense because, again, these limits don't reflect the reality of people's situations of thinking, oh, I'm going to continue the pregnancy and I just lost my job and my husband was killed. Or, I'm just diagnosed with cancer. Or I thought everything was going great and all of a sudden the baby in the womb had a stroke. I mean, we don't know what can happen. And so these gestational limits are so arbitrary and are not helpful. And so that's actually back when you were talking about silencing, this notion of viability that many, I think even within our movement, have bought into of having a limit. And the limit is the old notion of viability. Thinking, well, it's almost like, well, if we're good girls, if we don't make people uncomfortable, if we say that abortion should only be available until viability, then maybe they'll be nice to us. I mean, I'm putting it in this kind of crude way, but maybe then the ballot initiative will pass. And it's this kind of buying into that silencing and fear, I think. And so I hope that my book helps kind of lower people's anxiety about talking about gestational limits and how arbitrary they are and going beyond this kind of preconceived notion of what's okay, of what will be allowed,
Yeah.
I think when people start to think if they try to be acquiesce to a movement that doesn't think they deserve to even be speaking on any subject, once you realize they don't want to hear from you on anything. So you might as well go out there with a splash.
Yeah. That is totally what I think. Again, I don't use your language.
You're saying you don't work at Abortion Access Front? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly. But I do believe that. And I think that this time is an opportunity. Roe was so problematic. Roe is over. So now is the chance to think big and not think narrow, think beyond limits, as my book is called, beyond gestational limits. Let's think of a new definition of viability.
And I love that because I think for those who really have compassion and do believe how we do that the reframing of viability is a must. It's going to be a really great gift, this book, to people who can answer that question and force people to also join on the compassion train. And, I think when we talk about humanity and compassion, we can't not talk about you, the providers, because part of the work that we do at Abortion Access Front is we work in service of the providers. We travel around, we check on them. We want to make sure that we can bring a level of support and community support so that folks can feel like they can thrive in the work they do because there's just a lot of garbage. And you did this work for 20 years. And as we talk to you, we're just a couple days on the backside of the anniversary of Dr. Tiller, who was murdered in his church May 31st in 2009. And we wanted to spend a little bit of time with you honoring his legacy since you're somebody who worked with him and knew him so well. So can you bring us and our listeners some insight about his heart and compassion to not only his patients, but to those who worked with him and how he might have inspired you to do this work and then stay in this work?
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you're talking about him because really, I loved him and I still miss him. And I think he was a remarkable person. And I feel so honored that I was mentored by him and I got to work so closely with him. And he absolutely informed my work. And I think I informed his in certain ways. I mean, it was a really beautiful relationship, truly a relationship. So that we worked together just beautifully. And one of the ways that we fit so well together was that I had worked with home birth midwives for 2 years between internship and residency. And I kind of absorbed a midwifery model of care that's really rooted in paying attention to the process, paying attention to the person's emotional needs, allowing the process to perhaps even empower the person. And it's very focused on them and their experience. And that was something that Dr. Tiller had as well. He had that philosophy without naming it in a way. And so I think that was kind of a meeting of the minds when we worked together. When we first met, he said this aphorism that he often repeated is the 4 rules of the practice. A woman's body is smarter than the doctor. Time, patience, and the baby will come. Respect the woman's rhythm. And if you forget the second and the third, remember the first. A woman's body is smarter than the doctor. And I immediately said, oh, that's midwifery. And within 5 minutes, he had offered me a job. So one of the things that was so important to him was the emotional care of the patient as well as the physical care. That was integral to his work. And so what he had at the clinic were support groups for patients. And so there was a group for the fetal indication patients and the group for the maternal indication patients. And it wasn't just giving them information about what to expect, which was repeated many, many times, even from the first phone call that they made to the clinic. So it wasn't an informational opportunity. It was more for them to talk to each other. And that was so powerful because often people felt so isolated. And we haven't talked about abortion stigma, but it's huge, especially later in pregnancy. So to sit in a room, even if you weren't planning on saying anything, but to sit in a room with others who knew exactly what you were going through and had the same feelings was so powerful. After he was assassinated, one of my colleagues in Kansas, Dr. Susan Robinson, and I were invited to start a third trimester practice in Albuquerque, New Mexico, at a clinic that already existed, but was only offering first and second trimester abortion. That was Southwestern Women's Options. And that clinic was very known for counseling and the importance of counseling, but it was individual counseling. But Dr. Robinson and I brought the groups to Albuquerque. So we continued that because we saw how absolutely important it was. And that was really fundamental to Dr. Tiller's care. And it wasn't just the groups, it was how he talked to people individually. He spent an incredible amount of time with people. He just would sit in his office, they would sit next to him, and they would just talk. And time didn't matter, which is, again, part of I was talking about the midwifery model of care. It's the process is as important as the end result. And he was so focused on that. And he was brilliant. He was so psychologically astute. Like he immediately kind of honed into what was going on for people and could get them to, here people came and they were so scared. Most of them were traveling from around the country, even outside the US. They didn't feel good. It was hard. It was hard to get to the clinic. They weren't talking to anyone. They felt so isolated. They felt so stigmatized. He had this ability, though, to put people at ease. And it was remarkable. I learned so much just sitting with him in his office as he was talking to patients. It was truly a gift to be able to work with him. And I still miss him.
That is so beautiful.
Sounds incredibly generous on his part.
Yeah.
And his time and his energy and his spirit. That is gorgeous.
And I'm really glad you're talking about him because, sometimes I talk to providers and they don't know about him. So I am so grateful that you're keeping him alive in this kind of way because his contribution to abortion was monumental, really, really important.
Well, we keep his spirit alive because that is who we are. And that is what is important to us in the work that we do. Here, the work that we do at Abortion Access Front, because we can't have care without providers and without generous providers and without loving providers.
When you're vilified by this outside world, it's very helpful to know that you also are loved. So I think of your work is kind of spreading that love. And I think it is important, really important.
Well, your book is really important, and I think it's going to really be a real new level set on how people are going to be looking at abortion as a whole. And I'm hoping that we can evangelize it and shout it from the rooftops. And thank you so much for the work you've done and for the book and for all of your advocacy, Dr. Sella. It's been a joy to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
To support Dr. Sella, you can follow her on Blue Sky and Instagram at Dr. Shelley Sella. And buy her new book, Beyond Limits, at your favorite indie bookstore. Also, she's going on tour, so check her out. You can go to shelleysella.com/events to find out if she'll be near you. As always, these stories and links will be in the show notes, and you can find the best, most up-to-the-minute resources on accessing abortion care and funding for your care on our website, aafront.org. Our Charlie chatbot on the bottom right will walk anyone, anywhere in the country through their options and resources for abortion.
You know, we do this show because this information is not given enough attention in the media. So help us spread the word by giving us some love, liking, subscribing, giving us a 5-star rating. Every bit helps and helps us reach more listeners.
That's right. And now, Liz, let's move to the party game that is faster than Monopoly and more fun than Taboo. 6 Degrees of Abortion. And this is when I take a story from the news and you have 6 chances to link it to abortion. So let's see if I can stump you this week, Liz.
Okay, what you got?
Liz, Adrian Brody is an artist. That's right. You may know him as an actor, but he is recently launching a show of his work in New York City. It's interesting. He's also an actor. And so could you, in 6 spaces or more, link Adrian Brody, the Oscar award-winning actor and painter, to abortion?
Okay, well, I feel like everything he does involves the Holocaust. And so I'm trying to think of Adrian Brody movies that I can tie to abortion
Or actors he's worked with.
or actors he's worked with in those movies.
Mm-hmm.
I just think of him in The Brutalist. I mean, I'm like kind of blanking because I was just saw The Brutalist.
I'll throw you a lifeline. Remember, he famously kissed Halle Berry at the Oscars, kind of against her will.
Oh yeah, that was weird. But that still doesn't bring me to have that. I would have to bring Halle Berry to abortion somehow, which I can't do either.
Okay, I win. Fuck, it's been so long.
You win.
It's been so
I'm
long.
stumped. I
Ugh.
know. I'm just like farther and farther away. If you bring pop culture stories, guarantee I will never be able to tie them to abortion
Got
for the
it.
most part.
Okay.
So how would you have done it? Adrian Brody to
mine
abortion.
is deeply personal, and it really would make no sense. But Adrian Brody went to, I just found this out reading the article, LaGuardia High School in New York City.
Oh.
In the theater department. And one of my good friends teaches at the theater department at LaGuardia. So me, my friend at LaGuardia.
I love that.
But that, I was like, that obviously wouldn't work for you. So me, I'm the link right now for Adrian Brody to abortion.
Okay, good. So that's good, Moji. You could bring Adrian Brody to you, which is the cheat that I often do.
Thank you. Isn't that fun?
It was good. Yeah, good job. What kind of art does he do? Did you see any of the painting? Is it good?
Oh my gosh. It's pop-ish. It's poppy collage. It's not bad. I would not.
Kalaji Brown Jackson?
Kalaji Brown Jackson. Yeah. It's I think that one of the bad reviews was that it was derivative, which I could see, of like, Warholian kind of, but there's a pastiche to, I don't know. I would not put it in my house, but he's making money. I feel like they're 6-figure paintings, so somebody's into it. And you can go to his exhibit and they give gum that you can chew and put on one of the paintings. So gross.
I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but okay, Adrian Brody. Should we get to some fun?
Oh my gosh, our next guest is so much fun. You may have seen her on MTV's Girl Code, the Food Network's Food Debate, or on an AAF TikTok a while ago. She's here to talk about life and her new show, Relative Stranger. And here's a little taste of her stand-up.
Started comedy in Philly. I'm a storyteller comedian. When I started here, there was buzz about me. People were talking. They were like, this girl, have you seen her? She's like a young female Cosby. Now nobody ever brings it up. Everybody was saying, and then one day nobody ever said it again.
Please welcome Chanel Ali.
That joke is perfect on the week that Harvey Weinstein is also just wrapping up his trial.
Yeah, I need to write more fresh jokes. They just keep coming out. I keep forgetting. I got fresh material.
I know. I mean, I feel like that is such a classic joke, though. Like what once was the pinnacle of compliment is now the scourge of life.
More than a thinly veiled insult.
100%.
It's evergreen.
Yeah, evergreen. Never going to change. Never going to be redemption on that.
Yeah.
So, Chanel, we're so glad you're here. So, the world is a goddamn shitstorm right now. How are you doing?
I'm not doing too bad. I do feel the weight of the world every day.
Yeah.
But I think being an artist, I feel very compelled to make sure that I keep speaking that truth to power. And luckily, that fulfills me enough so that I have some hope.
Nice.
I mean, 100%, because we're all going through trauma right now. And we feel really lucky that we're having you in this particular moment because your current solo show, it's called Relative Stranger, addresses multiple personal traumas. And comics are always the people that can remind people that you should always try to make capacity to laugh, even when facing like the worst adversity. So
Yeah.
I would love for you to give folks a little bit of a taste of like what kind of material you are bringing to the stage in the show.
I've had a crazy life. It's been a doozy, which is why I'm so funny.
Yes.
And as crazy as my life was, I became a comedian and I didn't really reflect on it that much. I very much put it in the past, and just like steered clear. And then in 2023, I booked a commercial with 23andMe. And they tested my DNA and they told me about a brother that I didn't know that I had. And I connected with this brother. We're writing on 23andMe. He's like, I'm in the Navy. I'm stationed in Bahrain right now. This is the craziest email I've ever gotten in my life. And we realized that, we have the same dad, and my dad is a cop, you know. And I didn't meet my dad until I was 18 after a court ordered paternity test. So this is the second child that has come about. And I, decided to text my father and just be messy and say, guess what I did,
Guess who I found?
guess what you did again. And he was like, no, 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 I didn't do. I said, oh yeah, yeah.
This sounds like your personal Maury show. Wasn't me.
I'm sorry, I missed at the beginning. Your father did not know about this brother that you found.
Yeah, that's what he claims. Yeah. And it made me so angry. I don't think I'd ever been so angry in my life to have this conversation with him and to talk about DNA. This is a cop. We know about evidence. We have
Right.
a witness statement from the mom saying it was you. We have DNA. Like, I don't know what are you talking about? It was you. You know what I mean? And it became so enraging that it started to become funny to me. It started to become silly. And I just remember feeling empowered. Like, this is so crazy. And there's so many elements about generational trauma and family and secrets and truth. And I want to tell everybody. I'm going to tell everybody this story.
So do you have a relationship with your dad?
A little bit, but not great because I met him when I was 18 after that court ordered paternity test. And that was because I was a foster kid. And when you have been in the system for so long and you're about to turn 18, they want to rectify that money. They want to get that child support. So that's why they subpoenaed us for the test, because I was about to turn 18. I could have been able to say no after that. They needed to get that money, but they never connected us. He never found me. They never gave us any information. I found him just because they had told me he was a cop and I had his name. So I started calling police stations until I found him. You know what I mean? But it's really a testament to the government. I could never find this man because he was a cop. I could never find him. I always had his name. I could never contact him because he was a cop.
Wow. So being a cop puts up a secondary wall of
Yes.
trying to like get to your birth father?
Absolutely.
It sounds like, do you think maybe that's why he became a cop?
Because he's out here slinging dick everywhere.
I wish I could say he was that smart. I don't think so. I think that he luckily got behind that firewall. And I think if we required every police officer or firefighter to submit to make sure that they don't owe child support or have fathered a child, I bet you a lot of them would. I bet you a lot of them would. Because this is like pre-internet. I was born in 88.
Can I say that I feel like this is a missed opportunity for Doge
Absolutely. Talk about waste. You know how much money the government was spending every month to house a foster kid every single month until I was 18? The whole time they're also paying the father's salary as a cop. That's huge.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh, that sounds like waste, fraud, and abuse. So this is a lot, and like we're stunned here. So how has it been bringing like this sort of story to the state?
And this is just one piece of your
Right,
life.
like
It's really been a labor of love. I took it to Edinburgh, I took it to Scotland, and I grinded it out, out in the rain, handing people flyers, come see my show. And at first it was 28 minutes, and then it was 32 minutes. And at first I had 6 people, and then I had 12 people. And I just really grew it organically. And I did a Q&A after every story to ask people, what resonated with you? What do you want to hear more about? And I think that even though my story is unique, the elements of it are so rooted in humanity that I'm helping people heal. I'm helping them learn how to stand up for themselves. I'm helping them learn how to not continue that generational trauma and recognize what we're going to do differently. We're not going to hide the truth. We're not going to run from the facts. We're going to acknowledge the patterns and break them actively. And I think it's something that lends itself to, something international. And I'm really excited to say that I just recently secured an off-Broadway run in September in New York City at the Soho Theater. Yeah.
Are you breaking this
Ooh.
on our podcast?
It's happening. We're doing it live.
Oh my God. Fuck it. We'll be there.
September 17th through the 28th is the original run, and it's also being produced and fully paid for by Sarah Cooper.
Oh my God. Bless Sarah Cooper. The
She's
best.
also hilarious.
That is so great.
I love this story. Liz and I were talking earlier about like the hustle that female comedians have.
Yes, absolutely.
And so like when you were telling your story about being in Edinburgh, like you had to go out and find your audience essentially.
Absolutely. And in the beginning, my story it's hard to hear, and I'm infusing comedy in it. Luckily, I'm at this point in my career where I have the tools to do it well. But in the beginning, I had audiences, I had some shows that weren't good. Some shows where they were like, this girl, I don't know, this is a lot. This is a lot to hear, even in succession. But
Right.
now it's become this piece of art, this real healing roller coaster of hearing a hard thing and then watching someone heal from it and watching somebody be empowered by it. And I'm just really excited to keep presenting it. And it's in 2 years. I wrote it 2 years ago. Exactly. Like almost 2 days and 2 years ago.
Well, and I think part of what I'm always fascinated by when comics bring hard truths to the stage and they weave humor into the stories, it's incredibly powerful. It's catharsis. It helps other people go through it. But I also love to hear people's process about, we've all lived trauma. We all have these circumstances. You have, just us knowing about what's in your show. So how did you like decide I'm in a place where I've worked through this and now I can bring it to the stage?
Mhm.
I'd love to know how you decide that and then how you decide I'm not ready to talk about that yet.
I also want to tack on to this. Did you have to wait for that moment to start writing this?
I did because, this happened when I was like 11 years into comedy. I'm coming up on 13 years now. So early in my career, people used to always say, you should talk about being a foster kid. You should talk about those foster homes. And I really tried to, and I wasn't at that point yet. I would say things that were harsh. Crowds would literally awe. And that is way worse than bombing, in my opinion.
Yes.
It's a bad sound when I'm trying to make people feel good and show them that I'm okay. So I think I had to be past 10 years before this thing could happen and then I could process it the way I needed to. And what I really found is that I was celebrating a birth. I have this brand new younger brother who is now blown away because his sister has beat the odds and become a stand-up comedian. And
Yeah.
now she's writing me and telling me, I'm doing this and I'm doing this. And that empowered me enough to feel like the legacy shift is mine. I'm not all of these things that happened to me. I'm not even just saying all of these things that happened to me. I'm saying, look how I was built to be able to do this thing. And reframing it like that made me feel like I could empower other people to feel the same way. We're not a culmination of our traumas. We are every day after that, every single day after that we decided to get up and put on our shoes and do something. That is who we are. That is what makes us what is, the central thing that's connecting us. And I'm always thinking, how can I empower women? How can I empower people of color? I'm always thinking. And I think it felt almost like the universe was showing me that stop trying to make up a character and make up a story and make up a TV show. Show them how amazing you are and show them how you did accomplish your dream And then we'll do all that other stuff after that.
Well, I love that because it sounds like you wrote this show in equal parts, not only for yourself, but for the people out there to understand that strength about themselves. And that's pretty awesome because I'm sure you have, as our audience has, as we all have, seen some solo shows that are so self-indulgent where you're like, thank you. Now I'm just holding all of your trauma. And you're like, I feel really good now. I'm like, bitch, I'm now walking around with your shit. I got nothing.
I'm worried about you.
Yes.
I'm worried about me after watching you.
Yes.
Absolutely. At the core, this show is a love letter to little Chanel and all of the other little people that we have inside of us. And I'm saying, look what you did. I'm so proud of you. You a bad bitch. Wow. You spun that into something that's incredible. Let's dance. Let's party. This is amazing, And
Totally.
I'm just really proud. I'm really proud of little Chanel and big Chanel.
Well, I am too. And when we found out you were doing this show, I was like, this totally tracks because, we met you. You slid into us and doing amazing work with us for a couple of years. And, when you're just like, I'm going to slide in with the abortion crew and just be doing that and doing comedy with that.
Gotta be fearless.
Gotta be fearless. And so, I guess I want to know, how do you get to that point? Because everybody has it where because you're bringing topics like this and you're taking these risks to stage, that you are automatically never going to connect with everybody, right?
Yeah.
So how do you make peace with that when you're on stage?
I know that my show is really funny. And even if you don't get me, and even if you don't get the circumstance that I'm presenting, I'm going to make you understand my perspective. And that's through the humor. That's through the moments that I allow you to relax and enjoy and to poke a funny, silly hole in something that may not sound on its surface like we could do that. Let's do it together and let's empower each other to look at our lives that way. It doesn't have to be just this list of bad circumstance. We can poke holes in the hilarity of it, that circumstance even happened.
Yeah.
Part of it is that I stopped caring a long time ago. You know what I mean? I decided a long time ago that I deserve my dream and I deserve it. And at my core, I don't care that much about the people who don't get it. It's okay. They're a minority. And eventually I'll get them.
Yeah. I think that's smart. I think that's wise.
They can run, but they can't hide.
So Chanel, when you're not deconstructing your past traumas and for yourself and apparently your audience, what do you do for just the joy, for shits and giggles?
Oh man, I love escape rooms. You guys are lucky I haven't forced you into an escape room already.
I've never been in an escape room in my life, but my arm could be
I'll
twisted.
come anytime.
It's
Let's do
60
it.
minutes of very focused hanging out with a friend. It's great.
Is it just one-on-one? Is that a group activity?
Yeah, you do it with at least 3 or 4 people usually.
Okay.
Yeah, and they have different themes, different worlds, really cool. I just came back from Harry Potter World in LA. I love all Harry Potter things, magic. Also, orphan stories we love.
How are you dealing with your conflict of Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling being a cunt?
Very easy for me to separate a white lady from a thing I like. You would be surprised how much practice I've had in deciding the thing as a whole I like, but this one white lady over here is a part of it that's not as enjoyable.
Chanel, I feel like we wouldn't be surprised by how much practice you had, actually. We wouldn't be surprised.
Oh, yeah. Also, J.K. Rowling, always thought was a weird name. Doesn't flow that easily, doesn't sound that fun.
Also, J.K. Rowling.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Who are you? You know what I mean? But I love a good orphan story. So I go to the movies a lot. I like to bike ride Central Park. I travel a ton for comedy. I'm always out with the locals trying to find that art thing, the jazz, the what. My life is genuinely so exciting. It's incredible. Every day I wake up, there's marijuana. I'm just living really well.
You know what? I love it. And I love the fact that you, without hesitation, listed a whole bunch of shit that's just really fun. I like to go see jazz. I'll go find some food I like. I like traveling. I'm biking. I'm looking for some art.
Yeah.
You're an inspiration because you have decided every day that you're going to say yes to something. And I think that's a good reminder to everybody that while we have freedom, as fascism is in the not so slow creep anymore, that when there's beauty, when there's fun, when there's something to chill about, to seize it and do it. And Chanel, we're going to hold you up to all of that. And I'm so excited that people get to see you in New York.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited about the show. I always say life is short, but it's also long. So don't settle in and keep pushing forward.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Chanel, we're going to put all of your stuff in the show notes about your show, but tell people where they can find you.
You guys can follow me on Instagram at Chanel Ali. That's Chanel like the perfume, Ali like Muhammad. I also have a ChanelAli.com, which is my website, hosts my bigger shows, touring. I'm going to be at the Soho Theater September 17th through the 28th, presenting Relative Stranger, my one-woman show, produced by Sarah Cooper.
And we will put all of these links in the show note and make sure everyone knows how to find you.
And we'll make sure we have a posse showing up for your show.
Fuck yeah.
Great to see you. We miss you over here.
Thank you so much. Miss you guys too. I hope you have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Thanks to the amazing Chanel Ali and to the amazing Shelley Sella. You guys, that's our show. Thanks for listening. Go buy Shelley's book, Beyond Limits, and catch her on the book tour, and go to ChanelAli.com and do all the Chanel things. Do it. Go.
Hurry up, people. Get it done. And did we make you smarter? Did we make you laugh today? Then show us some love by liking, subscribing, and giving us a 5-star rating. Plus, stay connected with us on social media at Abortion Front across all platforms. With your help, we can get more people to learn about this assault on abortion access and team up with us.
That's right. Now, listen, we're reminding you again that we are doing a brand new Operation Save Abortion live stream. So if you want to gear up for August 9th, Netroots Nation, go and sign up for that and get your Saturday rolling, get your posse in order. It's aafront.org/opsave-netroots. We'll put it in the link, but do it. And also, we have a whole 5-part OpSave training. So if you're like, I want to gear up, do it. You can go to operationsaveabortion.com and you can check out our videos. You can do some of the amazing toolkit work there, as well as hear amazing activists talking about all different aspects of abortion activism. And while you're there, check out our super cool activist calendar, which is full of all kinds of local and national actions and educational opportunities. And Moji's going to tell you about one of those amazing opportunities.
That's right. This week, we're featuring Hope Clinic once again to celebrate the opening of their brand new abortion clinic in Chicago, offering much needed later abortion care in the Midwest.
Hail, hail.
Hell, exactly. Help us celebrate their grand opening by sending a few items off their wish lists, from phone chargers to travel mugs to support patients and staff. The wish list will be linked in our show notes. And if you want to get more involved, but you're not quite sure how, you can always sign up to volunteer at our website, aafront.org, and let's figure it out together.
That's right. And next week, as I mentioned before, Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs will be here to talk about reintroducing the My Body, My Data Act to protect reproductive and sexual health data. I am so excited for that. Also, jazz and blues legend. If you have not heard of Jackie Venzen, you are in for a treat. Jackie's music is incredible. She has a new album out called The Love Anthology, and she's also hilarious, and I cannot wait to talk to her.
I know, she's going to be so much fun. And everyone, join our Patreon. You'll support great content and get cool FBK merch and experiences. All pledges support this pod and all of our activism at Abortion Access Front. Pledge at patreon.com/feministbuzzkills. FBK is edited by Remy DeTournay and is produced by Jen Moon for Abortion Access Front.
And finally, we leave you with Australian abortion abolitionist pastor Millicent Cedra, a cunt who wants to show you her whole ass and her little dog, too.
Feminism has told us for a very long time having babies is slavery. So how about I just get a dog instead so that I can meet my need for nurture without the actual responsibility of having a baby? Because this little thing is a lot easier to look after than a baby. I don't have a problem with people that love their pets. I love my dogs. But I have a problem with people in culture that treat dogs like they're babies but then think it's okay to murder their own babies in the womb.
Feminist Buzzkills, the podcast from Abortion Access Front. New episodes drop Friday. When BS is poppin', we pop off. And if you want to support our podcast and all the work of Abortion Access Front, like, subscribe, and join our Patreon at patreon.com/feministbuzzkills.